Good. How much wealth would be produced in Australia during the months of April and May if all the people who work for wages, 90% of us, didn't go to work? That's right, zero. Zero wealth would be produced. I want to establish that first because wealth is the center of all of this discussion about politics. Because as they say in legal terms, possession is 9/10 of the law. Well, in political terms, wealth, possession of wealth, is 9/10 of politics. What what I want to address particularly today is the great transfer of wealth that's been going on through the taxation system since the time of Gough Whitlam in Australia. According to the ACTU, the amount of wealth or the amount of the GDP, which is one way to measure wealth that's being produced in Australia, is has was the amount of wealth that the working class had access to, or was about 20. Well, no, not 20%. It was over 75% in the mid 70s. And what has happened to it since then? It's gone down to 60%. And yet, the amount of wealth that's being produced every year since the 70s has increased by, in real terms, you look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics figures, in real terms, it's increased on an average from 2 to 3% a year. Now, the amount of wealth keeps growing all the time. But what's happened with the tax system, which is the way wealth is funneled into the government to pay for the various things that government does, like funding public education, health, and welfare. That amount of money has been whittled down by succeeding governments. And that's been it's been whittled down at the top end. And what's gone to what the government has tried to do to replace that lost income is by passing legislation that gives that makes taxation more regressive. Now, there are two kinds of taxes, basically. There's the progressive tax, which is like the income tax, where you are taxed more depending on your income going up. So it's a gradated thing. So, the top end pays like 42%, and the bottom end, up to $18,000, doesn't even pay income tax. That's a progressive tax. But what they've tried to do is to cut the taxes that have hit the people at the top 10%, the ones that basically have accumulated about 80% of the wealth the other 90% have produced. They've tried to cut those taxes and replace them with regressive taxes. Now, regressive taxes are sales taxes, essentially. Like the fuel excise is a regressive tax. And the sin taxes on tobacco and alcohol, those are regressive taxes. And the tax that they're proposing for to visit the GP, that's a regressive tax. And it's a regressive tax because everybody pays the same. Everybody pays the same percentage. Now, the GST is the mother of all regressive taxes. And this year, they're going to have this mature discussion, supposedly mature discussion, where they're going to try to convince you to accept a widened and raised GST. Now, that's going to be, it's not going to be in your interests. But that's what they're going to do, because you are the bottom 90%. They're going to try to transfer the tax burden of funding government from the big end of town to the general populace, the people who produce the wealth. And they're going to argue that what we need to do is widen and increase the GST. Now, you remember the GST, the one that Howard said he was never going to pass, or they were never going to do that, and then after he was elected, they did it. You remember that. That's been like 10% since the GST was passed. It was passed with the help of the Democrats, but the Democrats wouldn't allow the GST to be put on fresh food, private education, or private medical care. But what they'll argue this year is that what we need to do is widen it to fresh food, and we need to increase it to 12.5, even 15%. Some people have been arguing, in the conservative think tanks have been arguing for a 15% increase of the GST, or up to 15%. So that's what's going to be happening this year. And to have a mature discussion about taxation, we should also include the taxes that have been cut from the progressive income tax was cut in 2005 by Howard in order to try to get elected in 2007. Of course, most of the benefits of that cut went to the upper 10%. Of the upper 10% got more back than the bottom 80% in that particular tax cut. But that particular tax cut lost the budget $169 billion from 2005 to 2012, and lost it $40 billion alone in 2013. Now, if you compare that if that $40 billion that was lost to the $38 billion deficit in 2013, you can see automatically that if that particular tax cut was rescinded, there wouldn't be a budget deficit. And if the company tax, which has been lowered from 49% in 1986, and then Hawke bought into the trickle-down theory in '88, and it was lowered to 39%. And then Howard, of course, an advocate of trickle-down theory, lowered it to 30% when he was elected. And now Tony Abbott wants to lower it to 28.5% in July. Well, if those sorts of taxes are looked at, and we say we demand that the company tax be raised back to where it was in 1986. And we demand that the government cease and desist from giving $4.5 billion in tax concessions every year to the mining capitalists. We can engage with the dominant ideology, the dominant thing that's going to be coming from all of the media sources and all the politicians, well, most of the politicians, that we need to raise the GST. We can say, well, no, we don't want to raise the GST. What we want to do is take more of the wealth that's already being appropriated at the big end of town and put that into the public health, education, and welfare that we need. Right? We need these things, and we are not going to take any more of these cuts, and we are going to send a price signal to you, the LNP, just as you're trying to send a price signal to us. But with the GP tax, for instance, we're going to send a price signal to you, and that price signal is you're going to lose office. And we're going to organize to make sure that everybody knows that you should lose office. And that's what this demonstration is about. There are a lot of organizations here today that you can associate yourself with. They all want to get the LNP out of office. Do it. Just get them out. Boot them out. Thank you very much.